I think this is an interesting week. It starts a week ago where Fitch downgrades U.S. debt, which I think is just weird and kind of a bullshit move. We're 2 days before CPI, and we're taping on Tuesday. Labor numbers on Friday, I didn't think were very good. Let's start with the labor numbers. What did you think of that?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I didn't think they were very good. But, I'm still mystified that they have stayed as strong as they have this long. I mean, there's real conundrum about what's going on in the labor market because so there's so many different signals. There's a payroll employment report that suggests the labor market is tight. And then there's pretty much everything else. The headlines every day of the layoff announcements, the ISM surveys, even in the non-manufacturing ISM, the employment component is in recession territory.
Right.
Unemployment claims, albeit gradually, have bottomed and clearly turned up, and on a rate of change basis have actually increased pretty substantially, like you would expect at, a turning point in the economy. NFIB this morning, companies are having a much easier time finding workers, but their plans to hire aren't exactly robust. They're also in recession territory. So it depends. You can pick your narrative, I guess, is basically.
Right. Okay, well, I'm going to bounce a narrative off you, and I want to know what you think of it before we bring Bobby in for the next question. Is it possible that coming off a time where there was a labor shortage and people were terrified that they couldn't get enough workers, that they were a little more reluctant to start the process? Do you believe that's part of it?
Absolutely. I think, people talk about labor hoarding. And my feeling is there's this attitude, it's pervasive, not just on the part of companies, but on the part of consumers. And that is, if we can just make it a couple more months, it's this kind of, I think I can. If I can just get from here to when the Fed pivots, everything's going to be great, And so everyone's just trying to use the belt and suspenders approach just to get through this little rocky patch until the good, everything is gumdrops and roses and the Fed is no longer raising rates and all is good in the world. So companies are hanging on to workers to a greater degree than they normally would. So we are in a profits recession, and yet you haven't seen the employment decline that you would normally expect to be associated with that. Precisely, I think, because of the experience of the post-pandemic hiring issues. And that makes me think, maybe because I tend to be a little bit of a drama queen, that we're going to go from labor hoarding to labor shedding. Once they realize that it's not just going to be a couple more weeks or months, but this is actually going to be a much more drawn out affair, they're going to just start slashing headcounts with abandon. That's my gut sense. But
one of my favorite things about having you on, Steph, is that you always at some point during the show blurt out the title. Labor hoarding to labor shedding is an unbelievable title for this particular episode.